Hingham TV thanks you for watching this presentation. We'd love for you to become a member and use your creativity at our station. Please visit hinghammedia.org or call us at 781-836-5094 if you'd like to learn more.
Given you one of these yet? It's a recycling info card.
Oh,
you're welcome.
Has it changed?
Nothing's changed at all. We just put it on a fridge-ready format.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm the Recycling Education and Compliance Officer. What that means is that I design outreach and implement education programs in each of South Shore Recycling Co-op's member towns. And Hingham is one of them, so that's why I'm here. And basically what it looks like in Hingham is I go down to the transfer station, I have these pamphlets that I designed, and they kind of tell you what you can and can't recycle at that specific transfer station because it varies from town to town. And I find that it's kind of helping because a lot of people will ask me questions and they just have general questions about recycling. And so I kind of try to provide that kind of outreach through media in town, newspapers, stuff like this on community access, website postings, and I work with all different town offices like the DPW, Board of Health, depending on who runs the trash in what town, recycling committees, and just the general public. So the South Shore Recycling Cooperative is a government organization that helps its member municipalities improve the quality of their recycling programs, and it also helps them decrease the quantity, toxicity, and cost of their trash programs. So we offer a lot of technical assistance, help towns find the best pricing for waste management solutions and stuff like that. And we also advocate for stronger policies on the municipal level. So stuff like mandatory recycling, a lot of towns had to adopt something like that to work with me. And so the towns that are part of South Shore Recycling Cooperative also have the benefit of using my services, which is like outreach and education. So we provide a lot of different waste management related solutions to our towns. Hi. Have I given you one of these yet?
No.
It's a recycling info card.
Okay.
So the town of Hingham is one of South Shore Recycling Cooperative's member towns, and they're involved with my particular program because they were the first town to kind of sign on and agree to work with me, and so hence this is the first town I'm doing it in. So it's kind of going through a little bit of a trial period, but I think we're already kind of seeing some success in the way that engaging with every resident, I find, is kind of just, it's good because you can talk to people and you can find out what their priorities are and what their concerns are, and it kind of develops itself after a while where you really get to see what the big problems are based on the feelings in the community and whatnot. The transfer station a couple times a week for the past couple of weeks, just kind of distributing information and seeing these kinds of things and hearing these concerns and sort of moving forward based on that output. So 14 towns is a lot, and I have approximately 2 years to do this, so we've kind of distilled it down to what I hope to be. It's not an exact science, but so the first visit's going to include most of the outreach design and most of the actual outreach itself. And in between my time in the towns I find that I'm designing outreach for one town and actually doing the outreach in another town at the same time. So right now I'm kind of designing for my next town, and while I'm working in Hingham doing the actual outreach. So that is an ongoing process as I move from town to town. And then the second visit, I'm hoping to kind of reassess to see if we made lasting progress with the education program and make adjustments and suggestions as necessary. I haven't reached that phase of it yet, so I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but we're kind of planning on leaving a couple of weeks for a second visit in each town. My position is created through, it's something called a SMRP grant, it's Sustainable Materials Recovery Program, and it's through Mass Department of Environmental Protection. So basically my entire position, all the funding for my outreach materials, etc., comes from that grant. And so that covers about a 2-year period of me doing this kind of work. I have been down at the transfer station mostly, just kind of standing down by the trash compactors, because for the agreements the towns had to sign to work with me, there's one of 3 goals they could choose: to increase the overall rate of recyclables, to decrease contamination in single-stream recycling, and to improve private hauler compliance with recycling regulations. And so Hingham chose the first goal, just to increase the overall amount of recyclables captured. So how I'm doing that is standing down by the compactors and kind of seeing if I can like snipe out people putting recyclables into the compactors. And the number one material that I've been looking for, and that people have kind of been making comments about, like, oh, I wish people would stop putting this in there, it's so annoying, is cardboard. Yeah, I got you. If you have any other cardboard too, I can take it. Okay. So this is not recyclable, but this is. You want to take a look in here too. This is all of the stuff I've grabbed from people, and it is now going to get recycled because it's been rescued from the trash. And it's actually the easiest one to spot based on just, you know, its size and cardboard boxes and whatnot. It has the highest market value of any stream of recycling, so it's really good if we can recapture that value. And so I kind of try to stand around and see if I can see like cardboard poking out of someone's trunk, and I'll be like, hey, I'll trade you this cardboard box for this like informational pamphlet about recycling. Out of these things. Actually, I only have one more left in my pocket. I've got a recycling info card if you guys are interested. Have I given you a recycling info card yet? Have I given you a recycling info card yet? Any questions?
No, we've been going for a long time.
Oh, good. It's kind of enforcement with like a light positive spin on it, because I don't want to be like the evil recycling witch that's down at the compactors like yelling at people. So I just try to kind of make it as friendly as I can while still kind of doing the important work of enforcing and taking note on what I see and trying to see if we can keep the recyclables out of the trash stream. Wait, I can take that box. Oh, you do? Yeah. Okay, never mind. You can dump the flowers out and I'll take the box. Yeah. I got you.
So much.
You're welcome. Here, do you want one of these too?
Oh yeah, sure.
I learned how to recycle very young, and I think that kind of really shaped the way I just have like thrown away things my entire life. Like if there's not a recycling bin there, then I kind of freak out if I have like an empty plastic bottle or something. And I think I kind of turned into sort of like an obsessive recycler almost. And I had a lot of friends in high school who didn't have recycling bins at their house, and I would kind of smuggle home recyclables sometimes and recycle them at my own house, which sounds a little nutty, but I actually got, after one of my friends, they always bought like plastic water bottles, and I would spend the weekend at her house a lot of times, and I would leave her house with like a duffel bag full of empty water bottles every weekend. And one weekend, her parents were like, "Hey Julie, you'll really like this. We got a recycling bin." And I was like, "Wait, you did? Like, that's so awesome." And so just seeing stuff like that, I mean, it made me realize that the way you feel about something, especially like recycling, I never thought that I was gonna have that kind of impact on like her family. I thought I was just being crazy and like stealing their bottles, but they actually were moved by that enough to get a recycling bin. So I was like, wow, this is something that can really, like, if I'm passionate about it, I can actually affect people's behavior in terms of this. So I think that kind of lifted my spirits a little bit as like an environmental nut as well. I mean, there's so much convincing that we have to do in this field that sometimes it's hard to see the reward and the benefit of doing this kind of work, but just even having like those small victories is the most inspiring thing to me. Recycling goes so far beyond just, making the conscious decision to put something in the recycling bin as opposed to the trash, because that product, if it's recyclable, has such a long history. For example, if you recycle like a bag of cans, you're saving that bauxite ore, which is what aluminum comes from being mined somewhere like way further up the supply chain. And if you recycle a stack of newspapers, you're saving a tree from being cut down in the forest. And that's kind of always the picture that I have when I think of recycling. It's a huge piece of the bigger picture of climate change and environmental protection, and the better we can do to save these resources downstream, the better of a job we'll do saving them upstream. So again, like leaving trees standing in the forest, saving energy-intensive mining from happening. Another thing, like plastic is made out of petroleum, so if we can save petroleum from being mined, that's another huge positive impact for the environment. So it all comes back to just kind of conservation and environmental protection. Have I given you an info card about recycling yet?
You have to, but I know a lot about recycling.
Oh,
I'm
good.
a good recycler. I can
Here you
tell
go.
you know what, Alex?
Yeah.
I don't want to waste the paper.
There you go, that's the spirit.
I'm a good recycler.
Hello. I can take that cardboard box if you want me to. I'll trade you some recycling info. I do find my profession very rewarding. I studied environmental science, and I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to get a job in the field. But now that I have one, I'm really kind of beginning to see the true benefit of doing this kind of work. The conversations I have with people can really surprise me sometimes in a good way, and I find that there really is a lot of concern out there for how to recycle correctly. And I'm kind of, pleasantly taken aback when someone really wants to get into a conversation and starts telling me about how much they care and how glad they are that I'm there. And I have a lot of people now that recognize me and tell me I'm doing a good job, and it's still so early into it that I'm just kind of like, wow, this really is making a difference. So that feeling of knowing that you made a difference and left an impact on someone is just, it's amazing. It's a really good feeling. Have I given you a recycling info card yet?
I don't think so.
All right. I don't know if you're gonna throw away that box too, but
No,
I can
no,
take
no, I
it.
gotta
Okay.
keep that.
Okay. I like to snag people's cardboard if I can catch it.
Well,
but
you know what it is? The biggest thing I find is that the recycle area, where it is, makes it less likely people to recycle.
Yeah.
Waiting and waiting, and they know that.
Right.
So they have a tendency to just blow by it and skip the recycling. So I think if they reconfigure that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a complaint I hear from a lot of people, and I
that's all
witness
is.
it. Yeah.
And it's like that left lane will back up, and people have a problem navigating it. So.
Right. And there's between people pulling out backwards and the line gets out to the street sometimes, I can see.
So people get, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
Just something to think about.
Yeah, definitely a shared observation.
How are you?
Some observations I've had, just based on the interactions I've had with people, there's kind of some like different personality types emerging in terms of recycling. I would say like there's some people who, on the lower end of the recycler, super recycler spectrum that, you know, just don't really want to recycle. They don't really care to recycle, and there's very little I can do there. And then there's people who think that they are amazing at recycling, and then they'll throw something in the compactor that's recyclable, and I'm like, okay, don't do that. Hello there.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Awesome.
I have some info.
Awesome.
Next time, just so you know, there's a book donation thing up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Then there's other people who are, again, like genuinely interested with questions. So those are kind of like the audiences I deal with, and some words about the facility itself. It's kind of tougher for people to recycle when it gets really busy because the distance between the recycling area and the street is not super long. So when it's busier and people want to recycle, the line for the recycling area can go out to the street. So that's kind of a disincentive for people to recycle on busier days. So that's kind of when I'll see more offenders down by the trash compactors. So that's kind of just a general observation that I find a lot of people down there have shared. That's probably also the biggest one. That's kind of an impediment for people to recycle when it's busy. So some of the misconceptions I find that people have about recycling, there are a few materials that are kind of more complex, even if you're really attentive to the recycling rules and everything. There's still a few materials that can be a little tricky. Some of the questions I've got is cartons, like juice cartons or something like those big things that you get your orange juice in. Those are recyclable at some places. They're not recyclable in Hingham. It all depends on who's receiving the recyclables at the end of the day and like who's processing them and whether or not they'll accept those materials. So there's some kind of like fringe materials like that too that are a little bit tricky because people just want to do the right thing, and like sometimes people like me who are what we can call wishful recyclers, sometimes they'll want to recycle those things even if they know that it's not supposed to go in there because they're just like, well, this can be recycled somewhere, so I'm gonna put it in there. So it's kind of, it's a little hard because there's a lot of components to these materials. So kind of breaking apart those components and trying to figure out what to do with them is one of the trickiest things in recycling.
Well, I have some acetylene torches in my husband's amp to get rid of. Do I put it with the propane tank?
What kind of torches are it? Like tiki torches?
Like the plumbers use?
Oh, okay, that might be considered hazardous waste. Is there like oil in it?
No, I think it's gas.
Oh.
Over here and talk to me now.
No, I have a legitimate question. This lady, this lady wants to know how to get rid of acetylene torch that plumbers use. Has propane in
itself?
it. Yeah.
Do you have it with her now?
No, she doesn't have it with her now. I don't think. She just asked about it. So that's like kind of an unusual question that I wouldn't normally get, but you know, I get all questions across the board, not just recycling questions. So I try to answer them as best as I can. One of the most overlooked facts about recycling, I think, or just little known about facts, is that recycling actually costs a lot less and oftentimes makes the town money, and opposed to throwing away the trash. Because on average, a ton of trash probably costs about $75 to get rid of for the town, as opposed to some streams of recycling where the town can make that much money back on a ton of the material. If you just look up market values for these types of things, you'll realize that there's really a lot to gain by recycling, and the benefits of recycling in an economic sense are very tangible for the town, and that eventually trickles down and reflects itself in your tax bill. So it's really something to consider. A really interesting argument I've heard a couple of times down at the transfer station is people say, I pay too many taxes for this, but it's like, your taxes would be lower if you were recycling. So like, that's something to consider for sure. And that's something I kind of want to start getting the message out more about as well. Saving money through recycling is a very real thing. they pretty much accept all plastics, including rigid plastics. They also accept retail plastic bags, like the kind of plastic bags you would get at the grocery store, which is kind of unique in terms of what a transfer station offers, so you can bring those down there. They don't recycle plastic films, which is like similar to plastic bags, but it's the kind of stuff that if you bought like a case of beverages or like water bottles or something, it's that plastic film that comes around it. That's something that you would have to throw away, but for the most part, Hingham does a good job of covering the whole plastic spectrum. Those are not acceptable. They're too fine of a material, too low quality of a paper, and most of the time they're contaminated with like food or whatever you would generally wipe up with a paper towel or a napkin, or things that are just not wanted in the stream. So the cartons are not. The only caveat to all of those things you just mentioned is the pizza boxes. That's one that I've kind of had fun enforcing down there, because a lot of times people, and it's true, a lot of times people will say don't recycle pizza boxes because they are greasy, they're dirty, and for the most part that's true, but sometimes a pizza box can be salvageable, and even if the whole thing isn't, usually you can just tear off the top of it if there's no grease on it and recycle that, and then throw away the bottom part that's all greasy. And a lot of times too, pizza places will put like an insert underneath the pizza, and that catches most of the grease, and then the whole box will be clean and good for recycling. So that's, as long as a pizza box is not greasy or any part of it is not greasy, you can recycle the non-greasy parts. But if it is greasy, you have to throw it away. Clean is just like a basic, if it's something that had liquid, just like a basic rinse, you know, it doesn't have to be like crystal clean, but it should be fairly clean, you know, like a lot of the problems with things that aren't rinsed out, like if it's a thing of orange juice, it'll get moldy. That's not good. So if you just rinse it out lightly with water, put the lid back on and recycle it. Lids being like plastic bottles, because you can't put the metal lids back on glass bottles. It's a fun little fact to add on there. But for things like peanut butter jars and like jelly jars, that's kind of, you gotta scrub a little bit more to get the food out. So as long as it's like there's no food remnants in there and it's not full of anything or like half full of anything, then it should be pretty clean. It's kind of a problem of like, again, if something's moldy, then that's just a hazard that goes from being not a hazard to a hazard. And then there's the hazard of that contaminating the entire batch. So a lot of problems that, Hingham's not a single stream town, but a lot of problems that single stream recycling towns have, which I should probably clarify, single stream is when instead of separating all of your materials, you can all just throw them all into one bin, which is kind of a good strategy in the way that it captures more material overall and diverts more material from the trash stream, but it's also highly contaminated. So problems that people in single stream towns are seeing is that sometimes their batches get so contaminated with these types of things that they're getting rejected by the hauler. And that amounts in a huge loss to the town. And so it's kind of an accumulation of things, like if they aren't washed out or like you have like half full bottles full of stuff, like it just gets all of the other clean materials gross, and it makes it harder to process them, and sometimes it can convert an entire bale of recyclables into trash. Not necessarily. A big product I see this with is styrofoam. Styrofoam is super cost ineffective to recycle, so much so that most towns don't accept it because it's like 95% air. And so the minute it leaves a place on a truck, it's losing money via transportation costs. So that's something a lot of towns don't accept. There are a few places that do, but usually it's not captured through the town's municipal recycling program. And there's even a lot of other materials, like sometimes rigid plastics, like those are accepted at the Hingham transfer station. Rigid plastics are things kind of like if you have like one of those white plastic chairs for your backyard or something like that. Those can be dropped off at the Hingham transfer station, but you could not probably I'm not saying this for all towns, but a lot of towns wouldn't accept that in a curbside recycling bin. And again, it all comes back to who's taking your recycling on the other end, whether or not that company accepts those materials or deals with those materials. So that's something you would definitely want to look into. And I find that the biggest one, though, is styrofoam. That's the most misleading recycling sign. That is a very bad attitude to have. Things do get sorted out at the materials recycling facilities, but if you put something in there that, like, we love to use bowling balls as an example, because these things, once they reach the facility, they get put on a sorting line. And let's just say something like a bowling ball comes down the sorting line and like hits one of the workers. Like, that's a huge occupational hazard. A lot of these things as well, like plastic bags and clothes and kind of like cords and wires, if that gets into the recycling stream, then that can really cause a jam. It literally gets tangled in the sorting machinery, and every few hours or so, the whole place needs to get shut down so the workers can get in there and cut these things out so the machinery can work properly again. So it really results in like a huge loss of labor, occupational hazards for people on the other end of the spectrum. So it's like, you really have to think about the people, again, the whole process involved in these things. And it's not just gonna magically disappear when you put it in your bin. Like, there are real people on the other end who have to deal with these and kind of face the cost of recycling improperly. So that kind of goes back to the whole rigid plastics issue. If it's something in your town that's accepted, you can, in rigid plastics, like the more rigid ones are usually, there's like 1 through 7 plastics, that being the number within the recycling symbol on the plastic. The lower density ones are kind of like 1 through 3, so that's something more like your standard Coke bottle or just like any of those like plastic containers you would normally see. But if it's something that's higher density, it may or may not be accepted in your town's recycling program. So again, like rigid plastics are accepted in Hingham, but they may not be something that would be accepted curbside in another town. So you can visit our website at ssrcoop.info. We have a lot of resources, town-specific resources. We have a lot of educational videos. If you just look up like the lifetime of certain products, I would say that that's like the best way to go about it, because there's so many components to everything we use that's really the part that hits home for me, at least, is like realizing the amount of miles something travels to get to you and how many like gallons of water it took to like mine a certain resource and process a certain resource. And so if you just kind of look into the history of that kind of stuff, that's a really good informational resource to have as well. I would say that if you can help it, please make an effort to recycle, because I mean, it has so many impacts. It may just seem like a minute difference if you're gonna throw something in one bin as opposed to another, but if you really respect the product and think about where it came from and all of the work that went into making that, you'll begin to realize that recycling is so intertwined with a healthy environment for future generations, for preserving our planet, for saving energy, all of these things that are just directly tied into keeping this planet healthy and able to sustain life. And I think that that's really the most important part about it. Think about those kind of things, because it really does make a difference. And like, people you love, people who are younger than you, it could affect their future if we don't start caring more about the environment and things like recycling.